On this episode of That Was a Show? Hey, have you guys watched Woops?
Not sure what that's supposed to be. A beauty queen or something?
Oh, who the hell knows?
Gotta say, this was a genuine,
Did not see this coming, did you?
No.
Anytime this show earns a legitimate laugh, I'm always embarrassed that it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
The jokes are just set up those pins, knock them down.
Knock 'em down.
But first, a few words from the hosts.
We began working on this fun podcast back in February of 2020, in the before times, as we say. But it's been a passion project for much longer than that. We recorded the first 3 episodes back when we could still sit together in a studio, before the need for social distancing.
We never could have predicted that it would be launched during one of the most tumultuous periods in recent history. We hope that it brings you a bit of laughter and joy during these uncertain times.
Most importantly, we wish to express our immense gratitude to the healthcare and essential workers keeping us safe, and our love and support to everyone fighting for justice and equality for Black and Indigenous people in Canada, the United States, and worldwide.
And now, on to the show.
Cold open. We grew up during peak sitcom, Seinfeld, Friends, The Fresh Prince, but those shows were diamonds in the rough. This podcast is not about those diamonds. It's about the rough. Some sitcoms were briefly popular in their time. Some were canceled almost immediately. You probably won't recognize most of these, and you'll ask, that was a show?
That was a show?
The podcast about failed or forgotten sitcoms from the 80s and 90s, starring
Brynn Byrne,
Aaron Yeger,
and Andrew Helmer as Barry.
a Radio Gizmo production.
Woops aired on Fox from September 27th to December 6, 1992. 13 episodes were produced, 10 were aired before it was canceled. Woops is about the only 6 survivors of a nuclear holocaust that wiped out every other human on Earth. They live together in an abandoned farmhouse and try to rebuild civilization. The central character is Mark Braddock, who is a school teacher at the time of the apocalypse and survived because, and this is noted many times, he was in his Volvo, which is apparently a very safe car. He narrates the show, and this is visualized through his efforts as a literary type to keep a record in his journal of their efforts to, as I said before, rebuild all of civilization. The other key characters are Jack Connors, who is a homeless man, Alice McConnell, who had been the owner of a feminist bookstore. See if you can guess if the male characters ruthlessly mock her. Frederick Ross, who is a pathologist or biologist or something like that, who is also presented explicitly as the token black character. Suzanne Skillman, who worked in a salon and is a dumb model stereotype. And Curtis Thorpe, a ruthless venture capitalist. Although it's produced like a traditional 3-camera sitcom, the one innovation is that it's actually a completely serialized plot, where each episode is a continuation of the overall arc of these 6 unlikely roommates trying to save humanity. In the pilot, they all get to know each other, and after initially fighting a lot and not getting along, they come together when Alice is abducted by a giant mutated spider, and the others work together trying to save her. We will talk mostly about episode 1, but also a little bit about episode 2, since it's a continuation of the same story, and it's so crazy because it's about the 6 of them repopulating the Earth. TV Guide referred to this show as a post-apocalyptic Gilligan's Island. My personal guess is that given what was pretty common in the late 80s and early 90s at the time, it might have been pitched as Cheers in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Brynn, Barry, what did you think of Woops?
Whoops. More like woof.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Barry.
It was definitely... It was not what I was expecting, for sure. I mean, I don't know what I expected. I mean, the title alone doesn't really give you a whole lot to go on, despite the fact that they clearly misspell whoops with leaving out the H and just going with the much less popular WOOPS spelling of the word.
Mm-hmm.
God, there's some innovation to it. I'll give them that. It was definitely, I'm impressed that it was greenlit. I'm impressed that a script that was not as generic as everything else that was on TV at the time made it to the air. I'm not surprised it was canceled.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think we found a show that's even more misogynist than Teen Angel.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. There are like glimpses of interesting things, as you guys were saying. In a weird way, it kind of reminds me a little bit of The Good Place. Like it has like those elements of something that could be interesting, like 5 people or 6 people brought together in an unusual circumstance that's, kind of surreal. But yeah, it fails miserably.
It's also, I was pointing out, it's very, very, very reminiscent of the Chris Lord and Phil Miller sitcom, The Last Man on Earth.
Oh, yeah.
Which came out a few years ago with Will Forte and January Jones. Almost identical premise. It is some form of nuclear holocaust happens, and Will Forte is the last man on Earth until he finds a mansion and is then living together with the last 4 or 5 other people on Earth.
I wonder if they discovered this show and said, okay, this was terribly executed.
Yeah.
But as a basic premise, we could do something with this.
Now, Aaron, did you watch this as a kid?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
If you're wondering why I chose this show,
sure.
I came across it and I thought, just based on the premise alone, I have to know more about this. Like, just knowing that, like, this is the most high concept thing you could conceivably do. And like, one of my favorite movies of all time is Dr. Strangelove.
Sure.
So the idea of a dark comedy set in and around this subject matter seemed intriguing. And this show was made like minutes after the end of the Cold War.
Yep.
So I thought, okay, like, it was immediately intriguing wanting to see it.
Yep.
And then I watched it and I thought, okay, like, one of the first things I noticed is that the execution is a lot more conventional than this high concept setup would have suggested.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
The rhythm of the comedic banter is so just typical of a sitcom of 1992.
Yep.
So the fact that it's a serialized plot and that it's this super high concept premise does not in any way inform the way that they actually shot it or wrote it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I'm sure there is, was it Gary Jacobs created this?
Yeah.
I believe was the name. I'm almost sure that there's a script sitting around of this pilot that was done with a completely different tone, probably as a single camera, and definitely like maybe almost with the serialization, maybe trying to capitalize a little on like, say, the Twin Peaks of the time, which was like sort of starting to bring more serialization into network shows. And I can just see a million studio executives being like, why not Cheers? Why not Gilligan's Island? That kind of thing.
The reason you can make a show like The Good Place today is you can make a comedy where you don't need a joke every 5 seconds. You don't need to try to force that in there.
Yeah.
So you can have like a minute or two go by where it's like actual true character development as opposed to just set up punchline. So yeah, the world could not have possibly been ready for this.
No, I can't imagine audiences even knowing what to do with it. This would have come out. So this was Fox. Fox is actually very famous for, despite being such a weird network in general, they greenlight some interesting stuff. They've always been the network that will give something like this a shot.
That's true.
But they never give them long shots. They'll give you a season. Like Fox is famously, they did Firefly, they did, Dark Angel, they did these high concept shows.
Didn't they do like Herman's Head and stuff?
Yeah. I think were they Max Headroom or is that MTV? But these were like these big shows that like just high concepts, but the second they don't deliver, they're like, all right, get it out of here. Come on. This also would have come out. So 92, Fox was just establishing themselves with like live comedies. And, they had the success of The Simpsons to back them up. But then
Married with Children was a big...
This would have been right around Married with Children.
Yeah.
And I think that's Married with Children is a better example of what audiences probably wanted at that time.
Yeah. I mean, like, Fox was kind of the trashy network at the time. I feel like Fox was the network of shows that your parents would, like, ban you from watching because you quoted some joke that was off color.
Yeah, you said damn.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It was like...
Damn ass or bitch.
Yeah. I feel like it was Married with Children. I was not allowed to watch for a while because they talked about sex too much.
I was not allowed to watch Married with Children either.
I was also not allowed to watch Married with Children.
My
Aaron freaked out when I was saying that.
Yeah, he did.
I didn't realize that was a common experience.
We're married and we didn't know this about each other.
My parents never really policed very much of what I watched. Like, I was able to watch Seinfeld from a very young age, Simpsons, but they had a hard line at no Married with Children.
Yeah.
And my mom would be like, that show's disgusting.
Yeah. I think it's just all the sex talk. It like really rattled,
Yeah.
Oh, but
the parents. They're okay with violence and like borderline racist things that are said in other sitcoms, but for whatever reason, sex is just too much.
I would watch sitcoms that did have sexual content or mature themes.
Yeah.
Sometimes shows that my parents would be watching and they were totally fine with me watching those, but not Married with Children.
Yeah.
It's almost like the trashiness
People
of
just
it.
didn't like Al Bundy. Let's just face it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you know what it was?
He was
like,
offensive to our parents.
Maybe, well, yeah, because like my dad, I could watch Seinfeld when I was really young with my dad, but it was funny. I mean, I'm not gonna spend any time, but like Married with Children, it's not funny.
No, it was pretty trash.
Yeah.
But I think maybe what it was is because a lot of our parents are roughly the same age as Al Bundy and Peg Bundy.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe they were just, it triggered too much for them. They were like, this is what my life could have been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just, Yeah. Anyway, back to this masterpiece, Woops.
Back to Woof. What a program this was.
Yeah.
What a magical piece of television history we experienced here.
All right, so let's talk through a few key elements of this pilot.
Sure.
So the nuclear blast at the beginning that destroys everything in one flash of white light except for Mark Braddock and his Volvo is the cheapest,
I would say it's the single worst shot we've seen in anything so far.
I mean, not to bring it back to Teen Angel, but I feel like it's very similar to Marty's death.
Yeah.
It's like, the least imaginative, like...
they definitely got there with the least amount of effort possible.
Yeah. What is the path of least resistance to just selling this idea?
Like, I don't even know why they bothered to have that establishing shot of Mark in a classroom. Like, just start with him at the ATM. You didn't even start with a full scene.
Do you guys think it would have been better if maybe they didn't even show it?
Kind of. I almost was thinking watching it, from a writing standpoint, if the actual first scene of the show was Mark waking up in the house.
Yeah.
And getting the exposition that way, but maybe...
Or that they've been there for a few days already.
Yeah.
And then slowly you figure out why these people are there.
Yeah.
In July 2002, TV Guide had a list of the worst TV shows of all time, and this was number 42.
I saw that too. Yeah,
only 42. What? How many? What the hell else was on that year?
I don't know. We gotta do a deep dive into that.
Can we
together.
all agree that we need to thoroughly go through that list together?
Well, clearly we're gonna mine it for content for future episodes.
Yeah, clearly. How could there possibly be
41?
41
shows worse than this
in one season. I don't. This show is would be in my top 15 of worst shows I've ever seen.
The music is an odd choice too. There's this classic Americana parade music that comes out of the opening sequence, and although the moment that explains this is missing from the old clip that we watched, based on research, the setup for the nuclear holocaust is that a kid was playing with a remote control car at some sort of military parade and accidentally triggered a nuke to go off. And then every other country with nuclear weapons responded in kind. And it triggered the like doomsday scenario that every
Sure.
dark comedy about the Cold War would pose.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where Woops comes from.
That's the whoops.
Yeah.
That's the whoops.
That's the whoops.
That's the oopsies.
The other whoops is the whoops in the spelling.
Yeah.
That's their second
Yeah.
whoops.
Oh, do you think it was like a copyright issue?
The whoops had a really hard claim on that word.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should definitely talk about the little patch of white hair that each of the characters has.
Okay, I love the restraint in not actually getting into it in the pilot. I love as your input, every main character has a little bit of white in their hair after the nuclear holocaust, and this is clearly a plot point. I found it interesting because on the YouTube clip that I watched, the first comment was about the white hair, and it said the white hair is proof that they're being controlled by aliens. And I was just like,
What?
I love that people are
So confused.
people are theorizing are theorizing
That
about
anyone
the
was
show.
invested enough in this show to even theorize. All the characters were these very top of mind archetypes from the early 90s. So you have the ruthless capitalist, and you have the feminist, and you have the homeless guy, and you have these characters that would have been in like 1992, the kinds of things that are like issues-based characters that would have been front page news potentially when people were talking about those topics. But like the way they treat these characters, I don't know, the jokes are so nail on the head
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so often offensive.
Super offensive.
The feminist character alone.
Yeah. Yeah. The joke is that, she is a feminist. She is terrible. Like, she is a terrible character, very unlikable. She's basically one of these like pseudo woke white ladies who, tries way too hard to be progressive, but she's actually like very self-absorbed and very oblivious to how, to her own privilege. So like that was like thoughtful, but I really, there's a lot of other problematic things that come up about her. Like, she's very one note. She's very two-dimensional. I guess they all are, but hers is especially offensive because basically every time she has an opinion or wants to talk about anything, the male characters roll their eyes and get really upset. It's just pretty troubling.
It definitely is like a weird comment on like probably the one. Actually, who am I kidding? There was not one woman in this writer's room. There was, technically.
Yeah, I looked into it because I
Oh.
was like, wait a second. There couldn't have been, but there was one female writer. I won't put her on blast here,
Yeah, I was
but
like, don't throw her under the bus.
Yeah. But I mean, she probably had no power in the room. Like, I would hope so, at least, or it's just part of a system. Like, I know sometimes, myself as a writer, I look back at some of the stuff I wrote even like a couple years ago, and I'm like, oh, like that's a little, because you go with the times a bit, and you're influenced, unfortunately, by either the progress of the time or the lack of progress of the time. And then of course there's the other female character who doesn't come in till like, what is it, like halfway through Act 2?
I would say she comes in right towards the end of Act 2. Yeah.
Yeah, and the character that is quite literally just there to be a target of the male gaze.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
entirely.
And then immediately they pit her against Alice, the feminist.
Yeah.
Immediately it's like, like there was this joke earlier in the episode where they hear a knock at the door, and what's his name? What's what's the thick Al Borland guy's name?
Oh, that's Jack.
Jack. Okay, so he looks outside and he makes a joke that is, oh, it's an incredibly beautiful woman, and everyone gets excited, and it's not. It turns out to be Fred Ross, which we will also talk about because he's amazing. But then, so the joke is, oh, it's a hot lady, but then it turns out not to be. And then later, he does the same thing, and somehow he is able to actually see outside, whereas before he couldn't for some reason, and it's dumb. But then he makes the hot lady joke again, and it actually is a hot lady. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he wasn't just crying wolf this time.
Yeah.
Oh, and the great thing is that she's not only attractive, but she's ignorant and,
yes, of course.
She's also very dumb.
Positioned
Yeah.
as this dumb character where, thank God for the other guys, it's a woman that doesn't have opinions that they're going to have to listen to.
Oh, right?
The long walk I was getting to there was, they immediately pit Alice against her because the guys are like, oh, they're drooling over her.
Yeah.
And she's like, immediately pipes in and says, she's not so great. And storms out of the room.
And they continue to do that.
Yeah. And it's like, if she were a real feminist, she would actually be, excited that there's another woman. And
there's some internalized misogyny.
This show goes in much worse directions.
Obviously,
I mean, episode 2.
Do we even have time to get into it?
We have to say that in episode 2, as I said in the intro, the plot is about them deciding whether or not they should start actively working to repopulate the Earth and figure out who's the alpha male and who's the alpha female and breed them.
Yeah.
And the 2 female characters compete for the attention of the 4 male characters.
Yep.
So that's rough.
Yeah.
That is not the most rough thing in that episode.
The first half of that episode, they mostly compete for the affections of just Suzanne.
Yeah.
Because Alice, despite being a TV actress and being attractive herself, is of course not attractive because she's a feminist.
She's only not
and because she just has too many things to say, and they're tired of hearing from her.
To be clear for anyone who hasn't seen this, it's not that she's not an attractive looking person. It is just that she has opinions and she's smart, and they can't, it's insufferable for them to listen to her.
Yeah.
There's a future episode. I did not watch the whole episode, more than 20 seconds of it, but the premise is that Alice is exposed to some sort of magical crystal and then suddenly grows large breasts. And then
really buried the lead there, man.
all the male characters start paying lots of attention to her, obviously, and then she enjoys the male attention that she's getting, and then the Mark character, as the nice moral at the end, gets to mansplain to her basically that she shouldn't be happy about getting all of this attention because it's undermining the feminist values that she has always worked for.
Yeah.
That's the plot of an episode of this show.
Yeah.
Sets her right back on her feminist path.
Yeah, exactly.
Does anyone, well, obviously there is evidence of this in episode 2, but it's funny how Mark is slowly kind of revealed to be some weird, secret perv or something, because he's the first one to suggest that they partner off.
He is, yeah.
He says some comment about how, I just sort of thought eventually nature would take its course and we would pair off. And it's is that really automatic? There's only 6 of them, only 2 of which are female. No one in the cast is queer or openly queer, so it's not going to be any of the guys hooking up. Why would that even be a thing, automatically?
Well, it's funny because obviously you would get to this sort of thing in this real life scenario. However, we get to this 5 seconds into the second episode.
It's not an emergency situation. It's not.
They're mere hours away from Giant Spider.
Yeah.
And then Mark is just like, hey, wouldn't it be kind of funny if maybe we all started banging, and everybody's like, weird flex, okay, Mark.
Well, okay, and so that's episode 2, which I think we're set up that they've been there for just a few days.
And I'm sorry, I just have to say this. Why were they wearing new outfits in episode 2?
So if episode 2 is the story of them deciding whether or not they should repopulate the Earth, episode 1, the first big survival skill that they need to tackle is growing food.
Yeah.
And so their immediate thought is to grow wheat, which I don't want to go into a whole like long rant about farming, but that's not going to do much for their survival over the next, weeks. And
the show plays pretty fast and loose with what the outside world is like, because Mark is wandering through a desert and then comes over a hill and into a completely green, like everything's fine farm.
Yeah. Like, where are they? It's supposed to be California, I think, but...
Well, you see, it's a valley, and so somehow it was protected from the nuclear holocaust that destroyed all of humanity because the ground just dipped down a little bit there.
Right. I think it's important that we all really dig into this. Gotta say, third act surprise, giant spider entering into the sitcom. Didn't see coming, loved it. And what in the hell was this show? You say there's a magic crystal in a few episodes later. There's a giant spider. Thrown for a loop.
There's a I'm assuming Thanksgiving episode where a turkey becomes a giant turkey and runs off with Alice. So
wait, what?
But is it Alice again, or is it?
Actually,
Probably.
Is it Alice?
No, but runs off with her, like as in she tries to save
like
it.
Abducts one of the women.
Then
then the others have to save her.
Well, they all, they're women, so they be damseled.
Yeah, exactly.
Women be damseled.
Yeah, but there's a lot of like magical elements or things relating to like things that develop powers because of the nuclear radiation, presumably.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, when the spider takes her, what is the line? It's like, I can do anything that you guys can. It's something like that. And then the spider immediately takes her. When she's trying to assert herself and be brave, it immediately takes her.
I believe she also lets out a
whoop, whoop,
yeah.
whoop.
Yeah. And also, what's her name? What's the hot girl's name? Suzanne. Yeah. And then she has like fainted, right before that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although there is, of course, the moment where she mentions that in her bookstore, she carried a book on feminist gardening. And then the other characters have a nice little retort to that. What's feminist gardening? I'm guessing no zucchini.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. I feel like, we are jumping around a lot, but there's just so many things as you remember.
Oh, yeah.
There's also like no trauma or mourning period for the fact that they've lost all their friends and family and loved ones.
I didn't even think of that until this moment.
Curtis very clearly mentions having a wife and not once.
He talks about how he has a mansion and he has this and he has a wife that got liposuction every year.
That's right.
Well, she was just another one of his expensive possessions.
Yeah, but another, addition to the bucket of misogyny. Like, that's why she's great, is because she sucked her fat out every year.
Yeah. But there is no mourning period for any of them.
No.
Even though there's parts of this show that lead us to believe that part of this is going to be about self-reflection and about philosophy, and there's Mark's journaling.
It's all very surface.
It's all very surface.
Yeah.
I don't know what I wanted to say about the giant spider, other than the fact that I did not see that twist coming.
No, I was thoroughly
it's like
thrown for a loop.
The giant frog from Aliens in the Family.
Yeah, and then you said there was a giant turkey later. How many giant creatures are we going to encounter over the course of this podcast?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Giant creature entering into our sitcom trope lexicon?
Well, it seems like the main thing that they could come up with that would be the result of nuclear radiation is that something grows bigger. I thought that the type of comedy that I was expecting to see was like mundane absurdity.
Yeah.
And then when it goes into that giant spider, I'm thinking like, okay, this is like record scratch. This is a different kind of show than what I was expecting based on the first half of the episode.
Completely. And then just hearing that it gets even more absurd.
So we talked about sort of the things that were pretty good or had the potential for being good in the show, like the whole high concept nature of it.
Yeah.
Can we talk about like the other thing that actually kind of really worked, which was basically every moment of Fred Ross?
Yeah.
Yes. Frederick Ross. Let's talk about him.
Yeah, I agree. The delivery the performance of Cleavon Derricks is just a definite shining spot in the show. A lot of his dialogue is mostly quick little asides, but man, does he deliver them well. And he has the only, in the 2 episodes that I watched, he has several laugh out loud moments.
Like actual legit laughs.
Yeah.
I think the whole like kind of like little meta thing of him calling out the fact that he's literally the token black guy.
Yeah.
Right before he appeared on screen, I was saying this is a very white show, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
And then he comes in and then it becomes this whole funny,
Yeah, he definitely gets he gets some great lines.
Yeah, he like literally steals the show.
And you're right, it is they often are able to use him as commentary on the type of character that he is.
Yeah, like every joke he has actually lands.
Yep.
He's genuinely funny. There's whatever they manage to preserve through these scripts as legitimate commentary manages to survive through him.
For sure.
The interactions between him and Alice are very great as well, because it really shows how shitty she kind of is.
Yeah.
As much as she's trying to be progressive, it's all pseudo progressive.
Yeah,
and
like she still has some real race issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and
she calls him, "Oh, son of Africa."
Oh, that was rough.
Oh man, was that rough?
And he also decides at one point before the giant spider that he's going to leave. He doesn't want to live with these people because they're so awkward around him.
Yeah.
And they make him so uncomfortable because they are so uncomfortable around a black person. And and he really like calls out the dynamic between them in a way that is taking a step beyond just being a joke and into actual commentary in the way that's delivered.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that they acknowledged that they actually did have some like racial issues and that it was not, you're right. The pun, as much as they do make little jokes about the scenario, it isn't completely a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for this one glimmer of something that's sort of progressive, that's basically where it stops. Like we've already talked about the sexism. We've already talked, but like in my opinion, probably the main reason this garbage fire was actually canceled probably had a lot to do with episode 2.
Yeah, they definitely got to episode 2 and
just how offensive it is in so many ways. Are you guys ready? Should we get into this?
I was taken aback by episode 2 in that as weird and off-putting as the pilot is, it actually like it was the first show that we've done that I was just like, okay, I'm ready to watch episode 2. You guys you'd suggested I watch it, but I also
we basically harassed you until you watched it.
But I also got to the end of episode 1 and was just like, yeah, I kind of want to see where this is going. And then episode 2 very clearly was my point where I'm like, I don't really need to see any more of this show. And that is all, of course, because of Act 3.
Yeah. Aaron, do you want to?
Sure. I can explain this. So episode 2, so
it is, of course, when they're trying
it's the reproduction episode.
Yes. So that's the setup.
Yes, as a basic setup, but let me walk you through a few things. So, same thing. I felt like I needed to watch episode 2 after seeing episode 1. I thought I do kind of want to see where they're going.
Yeah.
And initially, I was pleasantly surprised that they were actually doing this serialized structure.
Sure.
That it was a continuation of the plot in episode 1. Okay. And they're back to the whole farming thing. And then they have this awkward conversation about pairing off and having kids. And I just think like, oh, there's no way that they're going to handle that theme tastefully or appropriately. And
boy, do they not.
Boy, do they not. I mean, they take it in directions that are far worse than I could have possibly predicted.
Yeah. Real left turn.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, they hold like a social mixer to get to know each other.
How did they make the banner? I don't like
how anything.
No, I feel like
there's like a welcome banner.
In episode 7, we would have gotten to the fact that a solitary Kinko's survived.
Yeah. During most of episode 2, my jaw was agape.
Yeah.
I literally watched the show like this.
He has
the entire time.
His mouth is agape.
Yes. Obviously, the men fight over the hot model character. Obviously, they don't want to pair off with Alice because she's smart and thus annoys them. But then, as a group, they decide that if they're going to make a baby for the survival of humanity, they need to have some sort of competition to determine who is the smartest and strongest amongst them and breed the alpha male with the alpha female.
Right.
Which turns out to be Mark and Alice based on their metrics for judgment. And Mark and Alice are supposed to have their rendezvous, their initial sexual congress, and where they go with that, how do I put this?
She's wearing, this is
where it starts.
So essentially, it cuts to them in the bedroom and they're getting ready, and I guess he has done nothing to his appearance, but she has put on I guess is supposed to be sexy kimono that she found in the attic, at which point Mark makes in any other show, throwaway line about how he always had a bit of a geisha fantasy.
Yeah, totally assumed that was the end of that joke.
I paused. I paused. I had to do some cleaning. I texted Aaron and was like, I just got to the geisha joke. That was weird. Thinking that was it.
That was it. No, that's not it. Because when they start in with each other on the bed,
they're getting amorous.
Mark is not getting aroused. He can't.
No. Yeah. So Mark has a full-on fetish.
Yeah. So basically, Alice then, in an effort to get Mark aroused so that they can seal the deal here and carry out their duty to repopulate the earth.
Yes.
She comes back into the bedroom fully stylized as a geisha with face makeup.
Complete with Asian voice affectation.
It is
Michael Scott's
stereotypical.
It is Michael Scott's Ping character times a million.
Yeah, whatever the worst rendition you can imagine of this, it is as bad or worse than the worst you can imagine.
Yeah.
And that is not even just a brief one-off joke of, it's not like she just walks in, looks like that, says a couple words and the scene ends.
Yeah.
No, they ride that wave for a while.
They really hitch their wagon to this joke and then decide that the rest of the episode needs to basically follow this joke anywhere it can take it.
Yeah.
Overall, they treat the topic of sex like they're a bunch of bashful teenagers in a coming of age movie.
Sure.
Not a group of people who are clearly in their 30s and 40s. Like the level of immaturity in the way they even talk about it as a basic subject matter.
That's so true.
Makes no sense.
The men are all fighting over the women and whatnot. Not once do the women ever express any form of they get a choice in any of this. Yeah. They just go along with it. Suzanne... No. Maybe she's just not shallow. Suzanne is very cool with just trying everybody out. She makes a date with every one of the men on different dates, and which of course throws the men into a tizzy. But the women are never like, okay, I choose this. No, they are expected to go along with Mark's little fuck plan.
Yeah. It's just assumed that they're totally on board for this.
Yeah.
In my actual notes from when I was watching this and I was typing stream of consciousness notes in real time with the geisha scene, there's the bit where Mark can't get it up and the line is he's stuck in neutral. And then she helps him play out a geisha fantasy by saying a few words in Japanese. And then my next note here is, oh shit, with several eyes. No, she actually puts white face makeup on and eye makeup and uses hand fans and does a whole geisha song and dance thing. And it's one of the most racist things I have ever seen in a sitcom. I typed that all out.
I agree. I mean, I feel like Archie Bunker would have had a problem with this scene.
Yeah,
big time. This was a step too far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about Jack's little nugget that he reveals?
Oh my God. There's so many things in this episode that I completely forgot.
This is why, this is why we're talking about it and why it was probably canceled.
Again, not even a throwaway. Jack reveals very casually that he was molested
by a gym teacher.
And it is treated It's a joke. It's a punchline, and nobody knows how to react. But it is like expanded upon. Like it's just, oh my god.
Yeah, it's very clearly presented in a way that he's revealing something that actually happened to him.
Yeah.
And it's not like a sarcastic remark in any way. Like it is very much just something that is coming out about this character played as a joke for a really brutal laugh.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's just, I just cannot imagine anybody at the network watching this pre-air.
But even like, I think what happens is throughout the episode, it just gets like slightly more offensive. Like there's the first glimmer of an offensive line when Mark is writing in his journal and Thorpe comes up to him and kind of makes fun of him for writing in his journal. And he says something like, and Frank even took a day off.
Yep.
And then from there, it's the Jack molestation line. And then there's the entire third act of the
geisha.
The racist geisha encounter. So it's, So it just kind of like escalates.
Yeah. If episode 1 hooked us in, like we actually kind of want to watch more of this show and see where they're going, episode 2 manages in one fell swoop to just like crush any sense that there might be any good direction that this show could take.
Agreed. Yeah, they hit the brakes pretty hard on episode 2 there.
Yeah.
If Alice was already not the more hateable character, if Alice and Mark were not already the most hated characters on the show, that there would be no coming back from this.
Yeah.
I have notes on other episodes. I don't even know if I want
okay.
to talk about these.
I think we're okay. I think everybody should stop at episode 2.
Yeah, you get what you...
I can't believe you've seen more.
So I just want to talk briefly about the to feel or not to feel idea. I think that we are supposed to feel something from this show. Regardless of how it's executed, I do feel there's this intentional philosophical aspect to the show. But it's constantly diluted by really awkward and offensive jokes. And so it doesn't work, but I do think we are supposed to feel.
Yeah, we're supposed to feel, and it fails miserably, mainly because of the offensive jokes, but also because the characters are all just wooden stereotypes, and they're like not even 2-dimensional. They're like 0.5 dimensional. I think
they definitely there is definitely the intent that there would be continuing character development for these people, because they all start off very terrible, and I imagine that they would have become more lovable as the show went on. But they don't start deep enough to really, like, there's not a lot to explore.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really know where you take these characters, which is fine for a lot of sitcoms. But on the other hand, this is a show that was trying to do some character development. What do we got for...
Why don't we do the spin-off?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to be a quick one. The spin-off, of course... We're just talking about where they ended up, everyone who was involved in this train wreck, what kind of good things they ended up doing after the show was canceled. Like, the quick answer is basically the cast went on to do a ton of TV. Like, they all have a lot of IMDb credits. The creator of the show didn't really do very much. He went on to create another short-lived sitcom, All American Girl, which starred, it was the vehicle, the Margaret Cho vehicle, which I remember actually really liking as a kid, but unfortunately it had a lot of problems and only lasted a season. And then after that, there's like really nothing. So a lot of the writers and creators kind of crashed and burned in the 90s, while the cast themselves, and it's obvious that they were all very talented just by watching these episodes. They all went on to do a lot, most notably Evan Handler, everyone recognizes from Californication and like Sex and the City as well.
Yeah, he was... He's pretty prolific. In fact, you could toss his IMDb up, and he still works many times a year. Yeah. You know, I remember he was on the Aaron Sorkin show, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. I remember him there. This is the only time I've ever seen Evan Handler with hair, though.
Yeah.
Now, do we all think it's we briefly conversed. Is it a rug? Is it a toupee?
It kind of looks like one. It's definitely that weird 90s curly mullet, that like hockey hair look.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if he pulled a reverse Piven, where he has this thick, lustrous hair in this show.
Yeah.
And then very soon after, every other show, he's just bald, like fully shaved head.
Sure.
And if you look at Piven when he's in early seasons of Seinfeld as the actor who's going to play George in the pilot, he's balding the way that Jason Alexander was at the time.
Yeah.
And then you look at him in shows that happen way later.
Yeah.
And he's got thick, lustrous hair.
What about Friends?
6 Degrees of Friends.
What we got?
This is also another pretty simple one. Do you guys want to throw anything out there? What is your guess?
I feel like because of the caliber of talent involved on the acting side, we can't be any more than 2 from Friends. In fact, was Evan Handler on Friends?
Well, yeah, he was actually. Okay, so Evan Handler, who plays our anchor in Woops, Mark, is in one episode of Friends. He plays a director in an episode. It's like one of the big Joey episodes where he's a director. So not only is this masterpiece Whoops 1 degree from Friends because of Evan Handler, it's also 1 degree from Friends because of Terry Hughes. He was the main director of almost all of the episodes of Whoops, and he directed several episodes of Friends.
Onward and upward for him.
Yeah, for sure. Friends would have only been like a year later, so everybody greener pastures.
Does anyone have anything that they want to add to our sitcom library of tropes?
I guess just because we keep seeing it, giant creatures. Why are they in so many sitcoms? Is this a trope? Can we use this?
Who do you think the breakout character is intended to be?
I think it's Fred Ross.
I think at least in the writer's room, they think it's Jack. I'm pretty sure Jack.
Okay, fair enough.
Jack is their clinger.
It's Jack, but we want it to be Fred.
Yeah. Fred is also like low key, like that's who the lead of the show should have been.
Yeah.
So Barry, you're a producer in the 80s. I'm a network executive. Pitch me this show.
Hey, Aaron, do you remember the Cold War?
I do.
Well, that just ended. The Berlin Wall's down, and I don't think people are afraid of nuclear holocaust no more. That's the whole show. There's a nuclear holocaust, and there's only a little melting pot full of Americans left in a house. Why don't we just do that? The jokes will write themselves.
Sold! This was fun. We had a lot of laughs, but some things are no laughing matter. What lesson did we all learn from today's show?
Well, I think if you're fortunate enough to have survived a nuclear holocaust and you're living in a house full of complete strangers and you happen to have a geisha fantasy, you should keep that shit to yourself.
And cut to credits. That Was a Show is a production of Radio Gizmo. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on Instagram for info about upcoming episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends about it.
Next time on That Was a Show.
How bad are the establishing shots in this? I don't understand it because, like, this aired. This aired.
What's with his blazer, too? It looks too big.
It's a 90s blazer, man. They didn't fit.
Double-breasted.
Yeah.
2 sizes too big.
Oh, here it comes.
And
there she is.
With the towel over her shoulder, as she has to have.
Yeah. She didn't say honey or sugar, but
I'm sure she does in another episode.
She had 16 more episodes.
Radio Gizmo.